Hi, I'm Emily Payabyab, and I'm a 2020 graduate at VCU. When I was asked to be a part of this project, I thought it was a great idea for voices from real 2020 graduates to be heard, and for the world to know how we were really feeling while graduating during a pandemic. And while deciding how I wanted to tell my story by either summarizing my 4 years in college or to talk about a specific experience that affected me, yet another tragedy occurred where an innocent Black man was killed for no reason, and the killings have continued. And when I thought writing a commencement speech was difficult before, now I truly did not know what to write about without leaving out what was happening in the world. I think I finally know where to begin, and that is telling you about a few things that have stuck with me throughout my 4 years that I think are relevant now more than ever. They are: 1. It's not brain surgery. 2. Fail. 3. Change the narrative. Let me elaborate. 1. It's not brain surgery. Wise words from my very first advertising professor after having a panic attack that I didn't know was a panic attack at the time and had to be taken to the ER, where I was put into the trauma unit of the hospital. I already have a fear of being in that setting, so that was a cherry on top of a long, clueless night. I started to ask myself why I was feeling that pain and that anxiousness I rarely have felt before. I didn't realize until after I was released that it was indeed a panic attack, and I knew it stemmed from stressing over an assignment. I always look back on whenever I start to feel stressed or anxious and replay those words from him when I told him what happened to me. It was my first advertising class right after I'd officially declared my major. I was so eager for this first class because I had a feeling this was where I was supposed to be. Getting through that minor assignment reminded me how things always work out in the end, and that being stressed doesn't get you anywhere. It also made me realize that I don't stress over things that I don't find significant. It's normal to find yourself feeling stressed or anxious, but not to the point where you want to end up in the trauma unit of the hospital. Your mental health is way more important. Trust me. 2. Fail. To fail is not as complex as society makes it out to be. I can't speak for others, but I'm sure we have all failed at something before in our lifetime, whether it was failing a test, failing in a relationship, or failing to reach a goal that we made for ourselves. I can confidently say that I have failed at all of the above and more. This wasn't always the case for me, though. I thought that failing meant I won't be able to succeed at whatever I failed at, especially since we have been taught from a young age in school that failing is the worst possible outcome, and if you fail, you're then perceived as someone who will never succeed, that there is no room for error. Lucky for me, I have parents who have instilled in me that it is okay to fail. Many can't say the same and have these expectations of having to be perfect at whatever they do. However, I don't believe perfection is even attainable. To fail is not to stand down. It's a way to learn how to come back from it. Every one of my failures, mistakes, and obstacles that I have faced, I have overcome, which has led to internal growth and lessons learned from them in the end. We have the rest of our lives to succeed, but failure is a part of the process. 3. Change the narrative. My first year at VCU, the whole freshman class was given a common book to read and reflect on. The book that I could go on talking so highly about, and one that I recommend everyone to read, is called Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure to read it, Bryan Stevenson tells a story of starting out as a young lawyer who had just founded the Equal Justice Initiative, a nonprofit law office in Montgomery, Alabama, that is dedicated to defending the poor, the incarcerated, and the wrongly condemned. It brings awareness of the many problems in the criminal justice system and how we live in a world where it is better to be rich and guilty than Black and innocent. I was lucky enough to hear Bryan Stevenson speak at VCU about his memoir. He spoke not about the problems, but the solutions. The title of his presentation was called to change the world. His recipe for change touched on 4 things: proximate to those who are suffering, change the narrative, stay hopeful, and do uncomfortable things. Paraphrasing his speech, racial indifference is one of the biggest narratives that need to change. Till this day, negative assumptions and prejudice have continued to put people of color in harm. Slavery didn't end, it evolved, and the United States has failed to confront this injustice. With everything going on in the world right now, I keep going back to Brian's speech and just mercy, and that these words need to be heard and remembered now more than ever. If you can remember that recipe, and also that whatever you're doing probably isn't brain surgery, that it's okay to fail, and you have the power to change the narrative, I know the class of 2020 can move forward and make a real difference in this world. Thank you.